Welcome back to another episode of the Enlightened Podcast. I am your host, Luyanda Duma, and it's such a pleasure to be back here today. I have my favorite person in the whole wild world. But before we get to her, we're talking and diving into one of the most critical skills that you need as a professional to succeed, and that is workplace communication. So today we're going to speak about how to master workplace communication and just learn how to communicate effectively in diverse team, in remote work, and just as a professional, right? And joining me for this conversation, who's going to help us, I call her now the personal branding master, marketing guru, and the founder of Agenda Woman, Miss Nomndeni Mdakhi.
Hey, I'm so excited to finally be here. I've been waiting like this girl. When are you inviting me? I'm so happy to be here.
Guys, if you know me and her, you know our conversations are lit.
We talk all the time.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's get straight into it, right? I don't want you guys to be deprived of anything. So you've built such an incredible platform, obviously with Agenda Woman, AW Stores, AW & Co brand, as well as, you know, you're doing this for both women and also professionals, right? Whether you're an entrepreneur, you're a freelancer, whatever the case may be. Can you tell us a bit about your journey and why effective communication is so critical in today's work environment?
Oh my gosh. You know what I'm excited about? Like you know, when you speak to experts, the line of questioning is so different because it's not just storytelling, but it's actually honing into expertise in a way that allows people to extract, you know, practical tools that they can use at home. So my journey is, I guess it's not conventional in that I studied marketing. In actual fact, I studied marketing at Wits Technicon. That's what it was at the time. I'm giving away my age. And when I finished, I had kids, I got married. I then worked, I always say, for 2 seconds at MultiChoice and Discovery Health. And I quickly realized that I am not built for the corporate environment. But in actual fact, in hindsight, I realized it's not so much that I wasn't built for it. Partly it was, and maybe it was the divine guidance for where my journey was going to go. But a lot of it was just not having the tools. I didn't have a career plan. You know, all I knew is that I need to get a job. I only interfaced with the idea of career planning and, you know, guidance much later in my life when I started hiring people and realizing how many young people are not intentional about what they want to do with their careers. A lot of people, because of the environments that we and the backgrounds that we come from, we just look for work. You know, we're not intentional about what kind of work we are taking and what kind of work we're looking for. We're not intentional about the companies that we want to work for, investigating their values and seeing if they align with ours. So you see a lot of people saying, I work in toxic environments, but there's no interrogation and investigation around what does this company work like stand for, even when you're getting hired. So I worked for 2 seconds and I realized maybe it's not for me. I started my first business in 2009. I was at 2019. 2009, I was 25. It was a DJing school for girls. Ran that for about 10 years. Whilst I was doing that, started a creative agency called Edits Communications, where I did a lot of communication strategy for big brands, Unilever, SAP, so many of the big brands. I had an opportunity to work with them, did eventing, all the different things that a creative agency would offer. Around 2016, I kind of had, I call it a Jesus moment, because you know, Jesus like performing miracles at 31. I feel like it's such a big psychological shift when you come into your 30s. And actually my therapist confirmed it, that there is a psychological shift when you come into your 30s. And I just started to question if the work that I was doing was the work that I wanted to commit to. So that was then the beginning of the journey to Agenda Woman. And really, I had such a tough time building a business. And although I was successful, it was just a lot of hard work. And I felt like if there were tools and resources and access to mentors who would guide me in the space that I was in, I had mentors. It was just not in the space that I wanted to thrive. So I decided to start Agenda Woman because I just wanted a place where people could get content and they could get guidance. And now it's grown into what you see today.
Sure, and it's incredible. I think if you're not part of the tribe, I don't know what you're waiting for. Join the tribe so you know that she's building literally a network, and that access that you're saying that you didn't have at that time, she's now building and putting it literally in one hub for us where we can get all these resources and access to, you know, other women that can help us in our journey. As you're explaining everything that you've spoken about, all I'm thinking is, your job is to communicate.
Yeah.
And if you don't communicate your skill, your expertise, then you've got no business.
Yeah.
So how fundamental is this communication, and how have you sort of learned how to master it along the years?
You know, I'm finding more and more, Luyanda, is, I don't know if it's maturity or it's just deep thinking and reflection, I guess. I'm at a point in my life where I'm doing quite a bit of that. And I realized that a lot of success and lack thereof starts with intention.
Sure.
And I think communication is the vehicle that makes people know what your intention is, number one, and how you are going to deliver what you intend to achieve. I don't know if that makes sense. You know, so there's two parts for me. It's firstly the conversation that you're going to have with yourself around what it is that you want to bring into the world or into any experience. And then communication is then the tools that you use to make the other person aware of what your intention is. Right? Am I framing it the right way?
You're getting us there.
Because I want to really simplify it. And I think for me, it has really been about a lot of perception, right? And being clear about what I am sending out, what do I intend to receive back from it? So for instance, when I go into any environment, I already know what I want people to think about me. That is, I haven't even said anything. That is just the internal narrative that I have with myself around how I want to be perceived. And therefore, anything I do within that environment is going to be cues that I'm going to give the other person in order to receive the perception that I intended in the first place when I walked into the room. And I think where people lack a lot when it comes to great communication is firstly understanding, what do you want the feedback to be? What do you want to receive back with what you are delivering in the space when you enter or arrive or exist in any ecosystem or environment?
Sure. You're landing in a place now that's very, very important, which is like, it's a cliche, first impressions last the longest, right? When you're saying you craft the narrative of how you want, and personal branding as well, what you want people to think or say about you, even when you're not in the room. We have young people here and professionals that will go into new jobs or even existing jobs, very timid, very closed off. I don't care what they think of me. In fact, I don't even need them to think of anything.
I just want to disappear.
I just want to disappear. What are we saying to those people?
I just want you to know, if you don't exist, you won't be available for opportunity as well. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like you want to disappear for the environment, for the situations that are difficult for you, but you want to be visible for the situations that benefit you. It doesn't work that way. Every interaction, when I speak particularly around personal branding, is a brand touch point. When you think about Coca-Cola and how you engage with the brand, or maybe let me just talk about Kim Kardashian, you know, who is a very strong personal brand, regardless of what we think about them, about her, but she has touch points. And one of her main touch points is her program, the reality TV show, and her Instagram. That's where she tells us who she is, what she's doing, how she's doing it. And that's where she's consistently planting perception around who she is. So in any environment, you need to understand that you need to be clear about what you want to achieve. And I'm going to keep going back to intention, because without clarity of intention, you won't know how to communicate and how to act in an environment. If your intention is to disappear, then you will not be visible for anything, including opportunities. If your intention is to rise up the ranks, then the first thing is you need to be very clear about what does it take to rise up the ranks. And it's very different for every ecosystem. So in the same way that when I am in KZN, people speak Zulu. Right? So I need to understand the dialect, but not only the dialect, but also the culture that is the Zulu culture. Because communication is verbal and nonverbal. But if I'm in Lesotho, people speak Sotho. So I can't go to Lesotho and speak Zulu and think that I'm going to gain favor and people are going to understand what I'm saying. So every ecosystem has its nuances when it comes to language. And when I speak about ecosystem, I mean someone who works at Nedbank will have a very different experience for someone who works at Standard Bank. Someone who works in finance will have a very different experience for someone who works in SAB or in a lifestyle-based environment or brand. So it's very important to understand the ecosystem within which you exist, so that you understand the language of value within that ecosystem as well. You have to interrogate. It's not going to happen symbiotically. You have to be intentional and clear and ask questions and continue to create a feedback loop for the engagements that you're having in the space.
This is why we call it a strategic career plan.
100%.
Because
there is strategy.
There's nuances. Yes.
Absolutely. And people have to understand that within every strategy, you're going to have challenges. It's not going to be a smooth ride. The journey is not going to be easy. You're going to have to navigate differences in cultural context, in language, in race, in all of these different experiences that we're all facing and having. And good leadership is about understanding that we all have different backgrounds.
Yeah.
But how do you find the common thread that allows us all to galvanize towards a singular vision?
We've sort of alluded to what I'm going to ask next. You work with a lot of entrepreneurs as well as professionals, and now you're even doing coaching where you're working with people individually. What are some of the most common communication challenges that you are seeing, apart from, the biggest one that if you don't have any intent, then you're not going to be able to show up?
This thing, I don't know how your audience demographic looks, but particularly, I guess it's not even a color thing, but let me speak to my experience as a person of color. This thing of seeking to be understood. It can be such a stumbling block because you're engaging from your point of view, from your context, from your closed up environment versus seeking to understand. That inability to get into an environment and say, I'm going to understand the language of this environment, the communication that is verbal and the communication that is nonverbal, then I'm going to use what I know of myself. I'm going to build up my strengths so that I engage with that environment so that they understand that I can deliver value. That approach of always being about me when it comes to communication. It's similar when you're in a relationship, right? Where a partner is communicating their feelings to you, but you are not listening to their feelings. You're interpreting that through the lens of your own experiences. Instead of leaving that behind and saying, let me hear. It's active listening. That's what they call it. You have to listen actively, not passively. And this thing that we do sometimes when we are not intent on a goal, when you don't have a goal, you can get distracted by so many things.
So many things.
You're distracted by, oh, they don't understand me. You're distracted by, oh, they don't like me. You're distracted by, oh, everything is unfair. It could be true, but that's why you have a strategy. When you encounter those difficulties, you go back to your strategy and you say, how do I pivot from a manager that does not favor me? Maybe they don't favor me because they don't understand my context. Maybe they don't favor me because I can't look at someone directly in the eye when I speak to them, and that's their cultural nuance. How do I shift and pivot from my current strategy so that I can engage with them in a language that they understand because I am the one that is seeking something from the environment? Does that make sense?
It's making perfect sense. And now it's landing us to the next point. With workplaces becoming very diverse, you've touched on the fact that we need to think about backgrounds, we think about personalities, we think about different time zones, and now different work styles as well. How can professionals then effectively communicate considering all these things in the new world of work?
Self-awareness. You have to understand where you start and end, right? In my own cultural context, I start here and I end there. And from there, it has nothing to do with my cultural context or my story or where I come from or what color I am or where I begin and end. It has everything to do with what is happening within the team environment. You have to be self-aware. You have to be clear about what do you bring to the table that can cause friction, but also what can you bring to the table that galvanizes people towards a particular vision. So you have to be self-aware and understand that you will have traits that might be triggering for other people, right? You will have traits that will be triggering for other people. You have to be conscious and knowledgeable around what that is. And as you expand and you operate across different cultures, you really need to invest in understanding what the context of different cultures is. For instance, when I read Shoe Dog, that's what it is, by Phil Knight, the Nike book. Amazing book, amazing book. I literally cried at the end. I love reading autobiographies about business owners and founders. So Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, incredible book. Onwards by Howard Schultz, incredible books. Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson, incredible book. That will give you context around how you build success in environments that are not familiar with what you know. You can't build a global brand, whether personal or a business that you're building, without understanding that you will have cultural barriers that you're going to need to overcome. So when you start to engage with people that don't look like you, I remember a quick story before I get to my answer. I grew up in a largely black community.
Yeah.
I learned to speak English because my grandmother would pay for English classes on Saturdays. Big no gogo
Yes,
in the township who would go and we would learn English, and I learned English watching television. So I did not have the cultural context. I remember I would always say, what do white people eat for lunch or for dinner? It was such a far-fetched idea coming from the background that I come from. And when I engage now, and when you meet me now, my world is so big and so open, because I was very intentional around, I want to understand not only people whose color is not the same as mine, but people who come from different cultural contexts.
Yeah.
Because when you start to engage that, you realize, oh, there's Italians, there's Greeks, there's Arabs, there's this, there's that. They also see each other very differently, in the same way that I see myself maybe different from someone else. So there was an intentionality. And I remember it was Lady Leah, a DJ that we worked with in 2009. And she would come in and she would make jokes. And there was like, I didn't understand how they were funny and they were not funny. And this is such a true story for a lot of young people, particularly coming from environments like townships where they don't get to interface with these cultures, but coming into the workplace, they now have to interface with people from other cultures and understand what the value proposition is for them. But also the same with the other cultures, they have to interface with people from the township and people who come from the environments that we come in, and they have to understand what the value proposition is there. So it's very important to invest and be intentional and say, I want to understand this person's context. Now we have LGBTQI communities, right? That's also a very different context from someone maybe who might exist as a cis woman or a cis man. It's very important that the work that's being done in diversity and inclusion is not undermined, because it's such a crucial part in communicating and building an organization that thrives in 2025.
Emotional intelligence, because that's a big thing that will come up, and you'll find that a lot of people are struggling to navigate their emotions and show up in a professional manner in the workplace. Let's speak about, how does emotional intelligence play a role in communication, and how can professionals start developing this skill? Because it's quite key with all the changes that are happening in the world of work.
You know, I did an interview on it was a leadership conversation. I chose to focus on empathetic leadership because I always go into conversations through the lens of being a woman, because that's my lived experience. But not only that, it's also a place that I invest a lot of time and understanding through the work that I do at Agenda Woman. And in doing the research for that particular conversation, it was so clear and evident that women have a higher EQ when it comes to leadership by virtue of going into spaces with the intention to understand the other person. And I'm talking about leaders. I don't want anyone to be telling me about their boss who hates them, who's a woman, and. I'm talking about people who have risen up the ranks and who are in leadership roles and positions. You don't just get to the top by luck. There has to be intentionality and clarity around what it is that you want to achieve and who you need to bring along the way. Outside of that, we all need to understand that there has been revolutions when it comes to work. The first industrial revolution was very heavily leaning on strength, physical strength, right? You would succeed because you're working in a mine or you're making money in that way. And that's how a lot of people were building businesses. The steel companies, Thomas Edison at the beginning, it was the first industrial revolution. People were really engaging with each other based on hierarchy, and you were not, if you're at the bottom, you're at the bottom. If you're at the top, you're at the top. You are not supposed to engage, you're not supposed to speak. But when we think about the industrial revolution that we're in now, we're in the knowledge economy, where people are valued because of their knowledge. And you only get a chance to share your knowledge and have platforms like this when you understand how to engage with people from an EQ point of view. Ooh. Because before I tell you and I demonstrate to you how smart I am or what I can share with you, you're going to engage with me on a emotional level. What do we have that is familiar? What resonates with between me and you? It's doing the work of, even when you go into an interview, finding out who's interviewing you, going on their LinkedIn page, figuring out what they like and what they're about. What words do they use when they talk about themselves? Those are all clues that tell you what the person values. What I find lacks a lot these days when it comes to the workplace is people not taking ownership of their journey when it comes to success, and expecting that someone is going to hand it over to them. My manager doesn't like me, therefore I'm not successful. My workplace is like this, therefore I'm not successful. And handing over their autonomy of the autonomy of their success to someone else. And what I really want to encourage anyone listening to this conversation to understand is that, yes, there are challenges. We hear them. Anything you say based on what we say in this conversation, it's true. Very much it's the truth. But the fact of the matter is, you can either sit and wallow in your truth, or you can go back to your strategy and figure out how you can pivot and use the tools and the information that is available to you to better understand how to navigate the challenge that you're facing right now. So emotional intelligence is crucial because before we even start to speak, there's non-verbal language that you can fully understand by being emotionally apt and being tuned in and understanding what is it that this person is communicating to me non-verbally around how they're perceiving me, and how can I make sure that by the time we sit down, I already have the ability to change their minds about some of the things that they might have missed in the communication that was not verbal.
Nomndeni, as you're speaking, it's coming to me that I know the biggest difference between people that work in our space and people that work in 9 to 5 or corporate, or lack of a better word, in the workplace, right? There's a big, what you've just mentioned, them giving the autonomy and just their career, thinking that your success is based on that decision or the decision makers in the organization. What we do well, and we do well because I think we face a lot of no's and rejection and failure, and then you pick yourself up. And because you've got no, backbone or something to lean on, you're constantly on the go, which allows your growth and confidence to build way quicker than somebody who would be sitting in an office, right? I'm taking this to professional branding now in the workplace, right? You'll find that they will say personal brands are reserved for people like you guys that work, outside of the world of work. You run your own business. It's for celebrities. It's for, people that are doing big things, which obviously is wrong. It's not true. What is then your answer to that? Personal brands are reserved for people like us and not necessarily, professionals that are in the workplace.
It's very interesting because that is so true. People think when you say personal brand, they think of public brand. Yeah. Right? They think of celebrity brand. They think of, they don't even think of their CEO as a personal brand. Yes. And in actual fact, a lot of organizations choose CEOs based on how they present themselves and therefore how they will represent the organization. Yeah. That is personal branding. So I told a story in my last masterclass, and I tell it all the time when I go into personal branding masterclasses, particularly because a big chunk of my community is professionals. Yeah. And I want to always land this so that professionals understand personal branding intricately. Yeah. Personal branding came up as a concept in 1997. It was coined by a gentleman called Tom Peters. I always tell people to actually Google a article that was called Brand You that showed up on Fast Company, online, I said virtually, online, Fast Company. Tom Peters wrote an article called Brand You. And when you go online, you're still able to pick it up. And when he wrote this article, he was seeing a shift in the Industrial Revolution when it comes to how people were interfacing with work. When we exist in the knowledge economy, the base level is that we expect you to deliver on your work. Yeah. Like that's not how we vet. who gets the promotion. That's not how we vet who becomes a leader. That's not how we vet who becomes the manager. Your deliverables are the base level. That's what makes the organization work. When it comes to deciding who is going to lead, who is going to get the promotion, who is going to get advanced to the next level, those are the people that stand out. Those are the people who have a value proposition. And your value proposition is the entire presentation of your personal brand. Your personal brand is the promise that you make in any environment around how you show up, what you're going to deliver, and whether you deliver those things. It's a constant promise that you make at every touch point. If you're in a meeting, are you memorable? Did you ask a question? Because people undermine the power of just asking questions in meetings. Because the minute you have an opportunity to ask a question, you're delivering to the people in the room your ability to analyze information, your intellect, and your thought leadership. And when you look at job descriptions, sometimes they'll write those things. We're looking for someone with attention to detail. How can you demonstrate that you have that through your activity when you are in the organization? And therefore, how do you align that to your personal brand? So your personal brand is all the things that you do within an organization and the touch points that you create and how you show up in those touch points so that people can have a perception around who you are and they can define that perception when they speak to each other. Because you know, it's the Jeff Bezos quote, your personal brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And the things we say about you when you're not in the room are the things that we experienced about you when you were in the room.
How can professionals now build these strong relationships and, and brands in remote settings where, face-to-face interactions have sort of decreased? How can I make an impression online? And I asked this because you were actually the perfect person for this topic. As we're getting into this conversation and we're deep within, I am reminded of the very first Agenda Women event that I spoke at, the virtual one. Kwangathi si prepare Beyonce. Kwangathi people were going to be there in the room. You went all out. And I think whether you knew it or you did not know it then, there were things you thought about. When people watch at home, how can I keep them engaged? What will make them listen? People can, at home your TV is on, but you can go make coffee, you can do, but you were so intentional about making sure that your audience sticks for that full day in the different ways you did it, from your speakers to how it looked, how it was done, MC, konke. And I think about that now when I think of how to make an impression virtually online. Talk about that moment and then take us through how people can make impressions remotely.
It's so crazy because I think we all have, as I'm speaking to you, certain things happen to me naturally. They are just in my nature that my brain is wired in a particular way when I think about building perception and delivering a product or delivering myself. When I think about what the process I went through before I came to this interview, right? Making sure that I look well put together, the colors that I chose to wear, black being an authority color. I know I'm coming into an expert-centered conversation, making sure that I have a particular type of makeup on, and just being very intentional. Even the shoes I wear, I'm very, very intentional around, does this look playful? Does this look like accessible but also competent? How do you create warmth, in the way that you sit? I'm very, very intentional about all of those things. And not only am I intentional, I investigate them. I'm always curious about them. I'll go online and I will research stuff and I'll look at people who are well respected, and I will study them. How do they sit when they do interviews? What are they wearing? How do they create maybe ease? And how do they create competence? I'm very, very intentional, and it's going to keep coming up in our conversation, because I think the thing that anchors a lot of my work is, what do I want the outcome to be? Even when I get into meetings and someone starts talking, I'm like, where are we going with this conversation? Because we can all babble big words and we can all sound impressive. But if we're not solving a fundamental problem, or we are clear about our objective, we're going to get in the car, go to Durban when we are meant to be facing the direction that goes to Cape Town. The car is moving, but it's in the wrong direction. So I think that's the center for me of all the work that I do and how I present myself. In 2021, when I was curating the Agenda Women Summit, I had done 2020. which was all virtual. Even when I did 2020, I knew that it was crowdcast, right? It was a virtual platform. I was very clear about the fact that people have fatigue when it comes to virtual platforms at that time. Even though I did not have another option, I knew they would come because that's the only way that they can engage, but I knew that I needed to do something special. So I took the leap of faith. And here's the thing. There's another video I just saw that spoke about mediocrity being an opportunity. Right? How mediocre people are and how people just show up being basic.
Yeah.
And when I say basic, I mean doing what everyone else does.
Bare minimum.
There's always an opportunity to take it to the next level. Yes. And you can always ask yourself, how can I take it to the next level? And it's just small things. Just like elevate a little bit and immediately you're different. And I do that so intentionally. Just a little bit. Like just elevate a little bit. Even when I did the personal branding masterclass, wearing white was intentional. I knew how it was going to show up in the room. I also knew how it was going to show up on video. And I understood what that color would mean and resonate when it comes to the room. So when I looked at the fact that, okay, people are online, people are doing events, I said in 2020, I'm going to spread my Agenda Women Summit over 4 weeks. It was madness. I was exhausted, but it was memorable. And we were able to reach over 10,000 women within that month. And that becomes data that I can use for my organization when I go to brand partnerships. So 2021, the question was, how do you make it better? And at that time, we were kind of semi in and out when it comes to like virtual and in real life.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I can see the picture of the experience in my head. Like I see the picture. It's like when you sit down and you're like, I can see myself in that corner office, and you actually have a visual of what it looks like when you walk into that room. What are you wearing? What are your shoes like? Do you have an assistant? How are you engaging with the people as you're walking into the room? You need to have a visual. You need to have intention. And I'm going to keep saying it. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's the center, it's the beginning of everything that you're able to achieve in life, right? So I saw the picture in my head. I went online, I started Googling and looking at different iterations of this thing that I saw, and I started calling people, just finding out, is this thing possible? And when someone said no, I'd call someone else. I will take 5 no's before I accept that it's really a no, right? If the first person says not possible, I call the next person. Have you ever thought about this? Somewhere within these 5 phone calls, someone will say, we can either try or yes, it's possible. You must never ever take the first no as the driver or the ultimate decision making factor when it comes to what it is that you want to achieve in any setting, in any circumstance. Even when you're looking for opportunity that requires financial investment and you know you have 10 rands, but people are saying it's 50 rands, call 5 times, weigh. Okay, what is the benchmark? What can I negotiate down to now that I have information? So when I went into 2021, I was very clear about the fact that people are expecting it to be a crowdcast again. And because I made sure I don't communicate what it was going to be. I wanted to make sure that when we go live at 9 a.m. in the morning, everyone's mind is blown and they start sharing. So even from the mechanics, I wanted to make sure that people are able to share quickly. They are able to share immediately. And that's why we chose the YouTube platform versus a Zoom. Because we could have done that thing on Zoom. But I wanted to make sure that we use all the algorithm support from YouTube so that we can trend. But also I wanted to make sure that the person who is not in the room has the opportunity to engage. So making sure that we're looking at the comments and we're asking the questions, just making sure that you're intentional and collaborative and people feel like they are part of the work that you're doing. How do you do this in the workplace, right? You know that the opportunity that you're getting when it comes to interfacing with people is through Zoom or is through Teams. Just making sure that you're well put together from your hair to your face is already just taking it above the notch. Just making sure that you have that. And if you are on video, your surroundings, making sure that it looks proper. It looks neat. You have a corner that you're working from and you're intentional about what you have in that corner. It's like the studio. Immediately when I sat down, I saw the books. And for me, it's like, oh, okay, that's nice. Like, oh, I never would have thought about this setup. But I see the intentionality around what you want to bring into the engagement and the space. So it's just making sure that when people interface with you on the virtual platform, they can see that there's consideration and preparation around that engagement. Outside of the virtual platform, we're still engaging on social media platforms, LinkedIn particularly. When you're going to have a meeting with someone, I promise you, 9 out of 10 times they will Google you.
Yeah. Always.
9 out of 10 times they will Google you. I was watching an episode of The Kardashians yesterday, and Chloe was looking for a PA for Scott. Scott, right?
Yes.
It's Scott. I forget their names. And she said, the minute I'm done with someone's interview, I go on their social media to see if what I saw here correlates with what I'm seeing on social media. If I'm feeling like this person is warm, am I seeing warmth on their social media? If I'm feeling like this person is competent, what else can anchor my intuition about this person already? So people undermine the power of social media and how it can continue to tell your story when you're not in the room. I always make sure when I am in a big room where people are meeting and there's networking and there's business and I don't have the time to really anchor myself because I'm not great with an elevator pitch, I will make sure you have my Instagram handle.
Yeah.
Because that is where the story continues. If I can't tell you everything now, I make sure that when I give you my website and I give you my Instagram, the story continues.
That is where the story
even if
continues.
when I was not able to really engage you and sell myself in the 5 minutes that I met you, I will make sure that when you land on my social media or when you land on my website, you're just like, I need to get in touch with this person again. You need to be deliberate about every single touch point that is available for you, especially when you're in an environment where you can't engage with the person in person.
I don't want this conversation to end. A lot of women, I'll say women and professionals, because I think we suffer from it the most, struggle to speak up in meetings. They struggle to feel heard with their managers or teams, or they just struggle to raise their hands in boardrooms or even ask that question. What advice would you give to someone who wants to be more, one, confident, but also impactful when they have to communicate or when they're given the opportunity to communicate?
So there's a theory called the confidence competence loop. And I came across it a long time ago when I was investigating for myself what I want a gender woman to be about. And the purpose for a gender woman is to give women the confidence to own their future. I had to ask myself, what does that mean? It can't just be a statement that exists in a silo. And I had to really dig deep and understand what is confidence and how do people attain confidence. And I came across this concept of the confidence competence loop. And essentially what it says is you build confidence by continuing to feel competent. So you start maybe from zero competence. You don't know anything. Therefore, you don't feel confident, right? The only way you're going to build up to confidence is to try the next best thing that you know. Lift up the first, just go the first step, right? So let's say you're in the workplace and you're not confident about your presentation. You need to, of course, over-prepare. You have to do the job of preparing. Competence without preparation does not exist. You can't be competent if you're not preparing for the opportunities. Whether preparation is years of experience or preparation is 10 hours before the engagement, making sure that you know who you're talking to, you know what they value, you understand, and you do the research so that you understand a little bit about what is available for you on the table. And then you pick what it is that you're going to use in order to build your own competence, but to also seem competent to the people in the room. You have to invest time in making sure that you are in the right position to be seen as competent and to feel competent. And what happens is the more you receive the applause, you go into your first presentation and you do well, but maybe you're not the best presenter in the room, but you make sure that you also create a feedback loop, right? So I've said 3 things. The confidence competence loop allows you to build confidence by being competent. The more you feel competent, the more your confidence levels go up.
Increase,
So one step at a time. I did something well. Someone said you did well. Therefore, I feel better prepared for the next opportunity. I do that well. Someone says you did well. Therefore, you feel better prepared for the opportunity. The more someone tells you that you speak well, the more confident you feel about speaking well. The only way you're going to create that loop is also having feedback. Being clear about who your feedback is going to be coming from. In an organization, for instance, where you have managers and you have peers, maybe you don't have a great relationship with your manager, or maybe you do. One of the other things that people in professional settings don't do enough is to be proactive. go to your manager and say, I'm not great at presenting, but it's something that I want to do better at.
Yeah.
Please give me an opportunity to present to you, or in the next meeting. I don't know if I'll do 100%. Give me the space maybe to have a little bit of room for error, and then let me know where I can do better.
Sure.
Just that proactiveness and creating that feedback loop with someone whose feedback you value, but also whose feedback is crucial to your growth and success. So don't just choose your friend who's at the corner who's not going to be able to do anything for you unless you're right at the beginning and you know that they can give you valuable advice. So the way that you build confidence in the workplace is, number one, creating opportunities to increase your competence by preparing and putting yourself out there, knowing that it won't be perfect, but it will increase your confidence. And then number two, you have to create feedback loops with the right people in the organization who are either going to be making the decisions for your growth or can influence that decision when the time comes for it to be made.
How can they get assistance from you through the masterclass?
Oh my gosh. So there's a couple of ways that I'm going to be presenting my expertise. The first one is, of course, the masterclass, which I just hosted in Johannesburg. I'm going to Cape Town on the 1st of March, and I'm going to be in Durban on the 5th of April. For anyone who wants to know more around buying tickets for the masterclass, you can visit agendawomen.com, or you can follow me on Instagram. I'm sure you're going to have my name somewhere. It's exactly my name on Instagram, and you'll be able to stay updated. The second way that you can get access to my expertise is through the coaching that I recently just launched. I don't know how long I'm going to be doing it for. It's
maximize the opportunity.
Amazing,
I know her.
It's been an amazing journey when it comes to creating insights, really digging deep and understanding what are the real challenges that people are facing and what tools and guidance can I give them to get to the other side. The ladies that I've met have been fully booked for February already. And all the ladies that I met, it's just so fulfilling when someone explains their problem to me and my light bulbs just go off and I'm just like, oh, I know exactly how I'm going to help this person. And to not only know that, but to also know that you can guide them in a way where they feel like they were able to get themselves out of the situation that they were in. That's what I want.
Giving them the power to make the decisions.
So that's how I've structured my coaching, that it allows you to get to the answer by yourself, and I am going to help to nudge you towards the right direction. And it also gives me space to recognize that I won't have the answers for everyone, but the conversation will reveal the answer that is specific for you. So my coaching sessions are also available. I'm going to be launching a page on my website, nomndeni.com, where you can get more information about the coaching. If you need information before the page launches, you're more than welcome to DM me on Instagram, even on LinkedIn. I am Nomndeni Mdakhi. And then I am going to be working on an offering that I can't speak about right now, but that I'm excited about because it's going to democratize the information and make it more accessible for people at different financial levels and standpoints. So I'm really committed to helping people get to a place where they feel confident around how they show up. But not only that, I also want to help people interrogate their intention so that they're able to build the tools, so that the building blocks become clear from where they are to where their intention is. Because there's so much that we can aim for. But I think the power of personal branding is also intentionality and clarity around this is what success is going to look like for me. So my coaching is really the place where I believe I've been able to start to help women really identify what it is that they need to do and what the building blocks are going to be to building a successful personal brand that unlocks opportunity for them, whether it's in the workplace or at work or just generally in their personal lives.
Final takeaway?
Shoo, what can I say as a final takeaway? I think I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I think more than anything, even in my coaching sessions, I see people tripping over information because they don't know where they're going.
Ooh.
There's a lot on the table. There's a lot of data. You can Google 10 million things, but you are not able to give ChatGPT or Google the right prompt if you don't know what you're trying to achieve. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I see even when I get emails these days, when you use AI, you start to see this is definitely AI.
Yeah?
It's definitely AI. And it starts to sound repetitive because people are not giving the tools, the right prompts that will give them unique responses to their challenges and their situations. And I think in a world where we're also competing with AI, the differentiator will be a value proposition that I cannot Google.
Yeah.
How do you present a value proposition that is beyond intellect, beyond the information that someone can get online, and really is rooted in only what you can deliver or what you can convince people only you can deliver? Because we have to be intentional these days. I'm thinking about hiring in my organization, and I realize that a lot of the things that I want to solve for, we can actually solve for with technology.
Yeah.
So when I think about hiring, I'm now thinking about what is the unique value proposition that this person can bring into my organization? What is their lived experiences? Are they communicating it in a way that shows that they're competent, but also they have the right level of EQ that allows my organization to grow through the relationships that I believe they can pull into my organization as well?
And I've been speaking a lot to my audience around what recruiters or businesses and owners are looking for in this new year. It's no longer that skill, because we can teach the technical skill. We can teach that, but you can't teach someone respect. You can't teach someone,
great
attitude, creative thinking, initiative, adaptability. So those are the skills that you constantly have to master. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for
This has been truly incredible. We'll bring you again.
Oh my gosh, this was so quick.
Because there's a lot you can teach us as professionals. I really, really think there's a lot that we can learn from you around even intentionality and how to show up, because a huge part of how people are not succeeding within corporate is because they are failing to show up in the way that they should be, or their higher self.
Absolutely. And I think I'm sorry, my last thing that just came up, be careful of falling into a victim narrative. Because that will be your personal brand. You have to be clear about the fact that life is going to have challenges. You don't have to be swallowed up by those challenges. Look at them as something happening outside of you. You are still you. The challenges are outside of you. Don't blend yourself up with the challenge and start to describe yourself as your difficulty or the challenge or the position you find yourself in today. You're not a tree. You can move. You can change. You can be intentional and deliberate around how you want the next chapter of your life to look, and invest in resources and tools that can help you get there.
Sure. I want to leave you with just this one-liner that I learned at the conference, where at the end of a 2-day conference filled with so much of information, expertise, insights, it was quite overwhelming, because when you have to go home, you obviously have to then, apply these things inside the world of work. And the one thing that I shared with one of the panelists that I was also moderating, I said to the audience after we concluded that don't leave this information here. So don't leave this discussion on your laptop, on YouTube. Find ways to take it back into the world of work. Find ways to take it back into your room, if maybe that's where it starts, where the confidence starts. Take it back to your mirror, wherever, your safe space where it can be applied, but have it be something that is a part of your daily practice. Secondly, the host then left us to say, with everything that has been shared, even now, are you going to be a guest speaker? Because there's a difference between somebody that attends the conference or the guest speaker. And in a quick way, just to explain it to you guys, is that a guest speaker obviously reserved parking. You come in just before you speak. You don't attend the whole thing. Food for you is reserved that way. Special coffee. Like, everything is just done for you. But if you are the one planning the event or attending the event, it looks different. You are there 5 hours before. You are checking the venue, making sure that people are comfortable. You see the work that is put into being the person hosting. So this is your life. Are you going to be a guest speaker, or are you going to own the show and build whatever it is that you want for yourself? This has been the Enlightened Podcast. I am your host, Luyanda Duma. Till next time.